I'm standing at the grocery store checkout, and my mother-in-law Linda just told me to pay for her caviar. Not asked, told, like I was her personal ATM machine with a pulse. My hands froze on the conveyor belt. The cashier, this girl named Brittany with purple nail polish, looked at me like she was waiting for the punchline. I wasn't laughing. I was barely breathing. "No," I said. Just that one word, clean, simple, final. Linda's face went the color of a raw steak. "Excuse me?" I said no. "You want caviar, you pay for it yourself." I grabbed my kefir and my Greek yogurt and my bag of organic spinach, the stuff I actually came for, and I walked away from the register without looking back. Behind me, I could hear Linda's voice getting louder, could feel the stares from other shoppers burning into my back. But I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. I just kept walking toward the parking lot, toward my car, toward what I didn't know yet would be the day everything changed. That was 6 weeks ago. Now I'm trying to figure out how I got here. To this moment, where my marriage feels like a house of cards, and my mother-in-law is texting my husband screenshots of our conversation, and nobody seems to understand why I'm not apologizing. Let me back up. I need to tell you who I am first. My name is Ashley. I'm 34 years old, and up until that grocery store moment, I would have described my life as pretty damn good. I live in a 4-bedroom colonial in Riverside, Connecticut, the kind of neighborhood where the lawns are manicured, the cars are German, and everyone knows everyone's business whether they want them to or not. My husband is Michael. We've been married for 8 years. He's a commercial real estate broker, the kind of guy who closes 6-figure deals before his second coffee and still makes it home by 6:30 on most nights. He's handsome in that clean-cut, everything matches kind of way. Salt and pepper hair starting to show at his temples. He goes to the gym 4 times a week. His 401k is solid. His credit score is 792. We have 2 kids. Emma is 6. Jake just turned 4. Emma's in 1st grade at Riverside Academy, the private school that costs more per year than some people's cars. Jake's in pre-K at the same place. They're good kids, smart, well-behaved, the kind of children who actually listen when you tell them something, which, looking back now, makes me wonder if they got that from Michael's side of the family or my own genetic luck. I don't work, not in the traditional sense. I stopped my job as a marketing coordinator when Emma was born, and we never really revisited it. Michael made enough. We wanted 1-parent home. I did the math, and it made sense. Now I manage the household, the kids' schedules, the charity events. I sit on the board of the Riverside Children's Hospital fundraiser, which is basically a full-time job in a volunteer costume, and I keep everything running like a Swiss watch. Dinner is on the table by 6:45. The kids' clothes are organized by season. I know which teachers like handwritten notes and which ones prefer email. It's a good life, a really good life. Michael's parents live 40 minutes away in Stamford. His father, Richard, is a retired accountant, quiet, unobtrusive, the kind of man who exists in the background and never causes problems. His mother is Linda. Linda is the kind of woman who has opinions about everything and the absolute certainty that she's right about all of it. She's 63. She dyes her hair this shade of blonde that's trying very hard to look natural but doesn't quite make it. She wears designer labels. Nothing knockoff, everything real, and she keeps herself fit with Pilates 3 times a week and a strict diet that she mentions approximately every other sentence. She's been divorced from Richard for 14 years, which she brings up whenever she feels like you're not taking her life advice seriously enough, like the dissolution of her marriage is somehow proof of her wisdom. Linda comes to our house for dinner every other Sunday. That was the deal Michael and I made before we got married. Every other Sunday, 4 o'clock, casserole dish in hand, and she'd stay until 8. It wasn't negotiable. It was part of the package. I accepted it the way you accept the weather. She's critical of my cooking, too much salt, never enough flavor, of my parenting style, too permissive with Emma's bedtime, too strict with Jake's screen time, of my appearance. Have I considered a different cut? Isn't my hair getting a little long in the back? Don't I worry about my weight? But it's the kind of criticism that comes wrapped in a smile and a kiss on the cheek, so it's hard to call it what it actually is, cutting. Michael doesn't see it that way. Michael says she's just being Linda, that she expresses love through concern, that I'm too sensitive, that I should just let her comments roll off my back like water off a duck. He's her son. He spent 39 years developing immunity to her particular brand of backhanded affection. I've been at it for 8. But I was managing. I was fine. We were happy. That's what I keep telling myself when I try to figure out where the rupture actually started. 6 months before the grocery store, Michael's company went through a restructuring. He didn't lose his job, he was too valuable for that, but his territory got smaller, his commission structure changed, and suddenly our household income wasn't what it used to be. Not drastically. We're not talking about losing the house or selling the Range Rover. But it was enough that we had to have an actual conversation about the budget for the first time in years. I remember sitting in our kitchen, the one with the marble countertops and the sub-zero fridge, and going through the numbers with Michael on his laptop. He was scrolling through the spreadsheet I'd made, and his jaw was getting tighter and tighter. "I thought we had more cushion," he said. "We do," I said. "We have 6 months of expenses in savings. That's actually really good. Most families don't have that." "I know we're lucky," he said. But he didn't look lucky. He looked worried. "We might need to make some cuts." So we did. I stopped the weekly cleaning service. I'd do it myself. I switched the kids to the public school system, which broke my heart a little because Emma loved her teacher. But the tuition was $18,000 a year, and we couldn't justify it anymore. I meal planned more carefully. I canceled my Botox appointments. These were all things I could live without. I was fine with it. I was actually kind of relieved, if I'm being honest. I felt like a fraud sitting on the hospital fundraiser board while I was spending $800 a month on preventative wrinkle treatments. But Michael didn't feel relieved. Michael felt like a failure. He never said it out loud. He just changed. He started working longer hours. He came home later. He'd have a drink, sometimes 2, before dinner. He didn't ask about my day anymore. When I told him about things the kids did, he'd make these distracted noises and go back to his phone. And Linda noticed. She started calling more, asking how Michael was doing, implying, never quite saying but definitely implying, that maybe I wasn't taking good enough care of him, that maybe the stress of being the sole breadwinner was too much, that maybe I should be more understanding about his moods. "He's under a lot of pressure," she said during one of our Sunday dinners 3 months ago. She said it to me, but she was looking at Michael. "You have to understand what men need when they're under pressure. They need support. They need to feel like their home is a sanctuary." "His home is a sanctuary," I said, smiling so hard my face hurt. "I make it that way." "Of course you do, dear," she said. She patted my hand. "But sometimes we all need a little extra help, don't we?" That's when she started showing up more often. Not just Sundays anymore, Tuesdays, Thursdays. Sometimes she'd text Michael that she was in the neighborhood and pop by. Sometimes she'd call and say she'd made extra pot roast and wanted to know if we could use it. She'd breeze in with her designer handbag and her perfect hair and her opinions about everything. And Michael would light up like someone had switched his dimmer to full brightness. He was happy to see her, genuinely happy, more happy than he'd been to see me in months. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was being petty. She was his mother. Of course he was happy to see her. But something in my chest was tightening. Something was whispering that this wasn't normal. This wasn't just a mother and son spending time together. This was something else, something with an agenda. I didn't know what it was yet. I just knew that I felt it the way you feel a storm coming, in the electricity of the air, in the way the animals get quiet before the lightning strikes. And then came the caviar. That caviar moment wasn't random. I understand that now. It was 3 weeks after Michael's company announced they were downsizing his team. Not him, he was safe, they told him. But his biggest client, the one that had been generating nearly 40% of his commission, was moving their account to another broker. The one who'd worked under Michael for 5 years and just got recruited away with the entire portfolio. Michael didn't tell me about it for 2 days. I found out because Linda called to check in on him, and I answered the phone. "How is he holding up?" she asked. her voice doing that thing where it sounds concerned but also like she's enjoying the drama just a little too much. "Holding up about what?" I said. There was a pause, the kind that tells you someone just realized they said something they shouldn't have. "About the account loss. Didn't he tell you?" He hadn't, and suddenly I was standing in my kitchen with the phone pressed to my ear, feeling that tightening in my chest again, and Linda was on the other end, already pivoting. Oh, I'm sure he was just waiting for the right moment. Men don't like to admit when things aren't going perfectly. And I was nodding, even though she couldn't see me, even though everything in me wanted to slam the phone down. That night, Michael came home at 9 o'clock. He looked tired in a way that went deeper than just a long day. He looked scared. "We need to talk," I said. He froze. That's the thing about those 4 words. They freeze people every time. "What's wrong?" "Your mom called. She mentioned the account, the one you lost." I watched his face do something complicated. Anger, then resignation, then something that looked like shame. "I was going to tell you," he said. "When?" "I don't know. I'm still processing it." "Michael, we budget together. We make financial decisions together. You don't just not tell me about something like this." "I know." He set his briefcase down and moved past me toward the kitchen. He poured himself a drink, Maker's Mark, neat, and drank half of it in one gulp. "I know I should have told you. I needed a minute to figure out what it meant before I had to say it out loud." "What does it mean?" "It means I'm going to have to work harder to make up the difference. It means we might need to tighten the belt a little more. It means—" He trailed off and stared into his glass. "It means I failed." "You didn't fail," I said. But even as the words came out, I knew he didn't believe them. I wasn't sure I did either. The income drop was already straining us. This was going to hurt. He finished his drink and poured another one. "Your mom has been calling a lot," I said carefully. "I know. She's worried about me." "Michael, she calls every day now, sometimes twice." "She's my mother. That's what mothers do." "Not like this. Not—" I stopped myself. I could feel the argument forming, the one where I sound paranoid and controlling, where I'm the bad guy for resenting his mother's attention. "Never mind." "No, say it," he said, but his voice had an edge to it. "Say what you're thinking." "I think she's enjoying this. I think she likes that you're stressed and worried, because it means you need her. It means she's useful." Michael set his glass down hard enough that it made a noise. "That's a horrible thing to say about my mother." "Is it? Or is it honest?" "It's both," he said. "And I'm not doing this right now. I'm too tired. I'm too stressed. I can't have this conversation with you." He left the kitchen and went upstairs to his office, closing the door behind him. I stood there with the dirty glass in my hand, listening to him on the phone, his voice low, but I could hear him talking to someone. Then I heard him laugh. Actually laugh. A sound I hadn't heard in weeks. I looked at the caller ID on the kitchen phone. The last incoming call was from Linda's number. The grocery store was 2 weeks after that. Michael had been working insane hours, trying to rebuild his book of business. He was closing deals that should have taken months, burning through energy and goodwill like it was going out of style. He'd come home and go straight to his office. Dinner was something he picked at while scrolling through his phone. The kids barely saw him. Emma had asked me 3 times if Daddy was mad at her. I was managing everything alone. The kids, the house, the logistics, the emotional labor of trying to keep our family feeling normal when the foundation was shifting under our feet. I was tired in a way that sleep didn't touch. And Linda kept coming by. She started leaving food. Casseroles mostly, but also prepared meals from this fancy place in Stamford. "I know you're busy," she'd say, setting them in the fridge. "Michael mentioned he's been eating late. You need someone looking out for him." Michael never asked her to do it. She just started doing it. She'd text him when she was coming over. Not ask, tell. Bringing dinner at 6. And Michael would suddenly have energy. He'd come home on time. He'd shower and change. He'd be present in a way he hadn't been in weeks. I started to feel like a ghost in my own house. The grocery store checkout line was a Friday afternoon. I'd run out to get ingredients for dinner because Linda's casserole had somehow disappeared. Michael had eaten most of it the night before, and I'd thrown out the rest, which felt petty but also felt necessary. I needed to feed my family with food that didn't come from her. Linda was in the produce section when I first saw her, squeezing avocados with the kind of intense focus she brought to everything. She was wearing white linen pants and a silk blouse, looking like she'd just stepped out of a country club luncheon. She spotted me and lit up like I'd just won her the lottery. "Ashley, how perfect! I was just picking up a few things. Why don't we check out together?" So we did, and somewhere between the organic spinach and the Greek yogurt, Linda reached over to the seafood counter and grabbed a small tin of caviar. The expensive kind, the kind that costs more than a decent bottle of wine. She set it on the conveyor belt with the rest of my items. "I'll get that," she said. "My treat." "That's okay," I said. "I've got it." "Don't be silly. I'm feeling generous today." And I might have let it go. I might have just paid for it and let her think she'd gotten away with whatever this was. Except something in my chest just snapped. "Actually," I said, "you're paying for that yourself." She laughed like I'd made a joke. "What?" "The caviar. You picked it out. You buy it." Her smile got tight. I was being nice. "No, you were making a point. Everything you do makes a point, Linda. But I'm not doing this anymore. You want caviar? You pay for it. You want to feed my family? You ask first. You want to see my husband? You call and we schedule it like normal people. You don't just show up. You don't just assume. You don't get to—" I stopped because people were looking. Because the cashier, Brittany with the purple nails, had gone very still. Because Linda's face had gone the color of raw meat and her hand was gripping the edge of the checkout counter hard enough that her knuckles were white. "You're being very rude," she said quietly. "I'm being very honest," I said, and I grabbed my groceries, not hers, just mine, and I walked out. I made it to the parking lot before my hands started shaking. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, just breathing, trying to figure out what I'd just done. By the time I got home, Linda had already called Michael 3 times. He was waiting for me in the kitchen, his face a storm. "What the hell happened at the grocery store?" he demanded. "I set a boundary," I said. "You humiliated my mother in public. I asked her to pay for her own caviar. You made her feel like she's not welcome. You made her feel like a burden." "Maybe she should examine why that hit so hard then," I said, and I knew even as I said it that I was crossing into territory I couldn't come back from. Michael's jaw clenched. "I can't do this with you right now." "When can you do it? Because it seems like you can't do much of anything with me lately. You can do things with your mother. You can take her calls. You can eat her food. You can laugh with her. But me? Your wife? The person who's holding this entire family together while you have a midlife crisis." "This isn't a midlife crisis," he said coldly. "This is me trying to provide for my family while you sit at home spending money and judging me." I felt like he'd slapped me. "That's not fair," I whispered. "Fair?" He laughed, and it was the ugliest sound I'd ever heard come out of his mouth. "You want to talk about fair? Fair is respecting your husband's family. Fair is understanding that my mother is just trying to help. Fair is not embarrassing me in front of people I might do business with." "Brittany doesn't work with you, Michael. She's a cashier." "The point still stands." He grabbed his keys and left. I heard the garage door open. I heard his car pull out onto the street. I stood in my kitchen, the one with the marble countertops and the sub-zero fridge, and I realized something that I'd been avoiding for weeks. My husband wasn't on my side anymore, and I had no idea when that had changed or if I could change it back. Michael didn't come home that night. I waited until 11, then midnight. Then I stopped waiting and just sat on the edge of our bed in the dark, listening to the house settle around me. The kids were asleep. The dishwasher had finished its cycle hours ago. Everything was exactly as it should be, clean, organized, perfect, and I wanted to burn it all down. At 1 in the morning, he texted. Not called, texted. "Staying at a hotel tonight, need to think." I stared at those 7 words for so long that my eyes went blurry. Need to think. As if I was the problem to be solved. As if our marriage was a spreadsheet with numbers that didn't add up. I didn't text back. He was gone for 3 days. I told Emma and Jake that Daddy had to work out of town. They accepted this with the easy faith of children who believe what adults tell them. Emma asked if he'd bring her back a souvenir. Jake wanted to know if he'd be home for story time. "I don't know, buddy," I said, and I hated that those words were true. The house felt different without him, bigger and smaller at the same time. I moved through the days like I was operating on autopilot. Get the kids up, feed them breakfast, pack Jake's lunch, drop Emma at school, come home and clean the kitchen that I'd just cleaned, fold laundry, pick up toys, make dinner that nobody was eating. On the second day, Linda called. "Michael's in a hotel," she said. It wasn't a question. "He told me you had a fight." "He told you that?" The anger came so fast it burned. "He told you before he told me what was actually wrong." "Ashley, don't be dramatic. He's upset. He needs support. He needs a therapist, or a wife he actually talks to, or both." "You know what I think?" Linda's voice got that particular tone, the one that meant she was about to say something she'd been planning for a while. "I think you've been very unsupportive of Michael's career struggles. I think you've made this all about you, and I think you owe him an apology." I was standing in my kitchen. The sun was coming through the window, hitting the marble countertop, making everything look like a showroom. Nothing looked real. Nothing felt real. "Linda," I said carefully, "I'm going to hang up now, and I'm going to ask you not to call me again until my husband comes home." "But—" I hung up. She called back 4 minutes later. I didn't answer. She called again, and again. On the 7th call, I turned my phone off. Michael came home on the evening of the 3rd day. He looked like he'd slept about as much as I had, which is to say, not at all. His eyes were red-rimmed. His jaw had 3 days of stubble. He smelled like hotel soap and something else. Something I couldn't identify and didn't want to. The kids ran to him the moment he walked in. Emma wrapped her arms around his legs. Jake climbed up into his arms, asking if he'd brought them anything. Michael held them and closed his eyes like he was absorbing them through his skin. I stood in the kitchen doorway and watched. "Can we talk?" he said, after the kids went to bed. We sat in the living room on opposite ends of the couch. There was a throw pillow between us. It felt like a mile. "I'm sorry," he said, "for leaving, for not handling this better." "Okay," I said carefully. "What does that mean? What does handling this better look like?" "It means I need to listen to you, really listen. And it means you need to listen to me." "I'm listening." He ran his hand through his hair. "My mother called me, about the grocery store, about you telling her to pay for her own caviar." "Of course she did." "Let me finish." He held up his hand. "She called me and she said that you were being cruel, that you were humiliating her. And I was angry at you because I was stressed and because I thought she was right. But then I was sitting in that hotel room, and I started thinking about what actually happened. And I realized—" He trailed off. He looked down at his hands like they might have the answer written on his palms. "What?" I prompted. "I realized that my mother has been manipulating me. For months, maybe longer. She's been using the fact that I'm stressed to get closer to me. She's been showing up and making dinner and being supportive in this way that makes her seem like the good guy, and makes you seem like the bad guy. And I've been letting her do it because it felt good to be taken care of." I didn't say anything. I waited for him to continue. In my experience, when men finally start telling the truth, you don't interrupt. You let them get it all out before the defensive walls go back up. "She's always been like this," he said. "I think I just noticed it more because I was vulnerable, because I needed someone, and she was there. But she wasn't there for me. She was there because she wanted to be needed, because she wanted to prove that she was more important to me than you are." "Michael," "I'm not finished." He looked up at me. "The things I said to you about judging your weight, about you sitting at home spending money, I didn't mean those things. I was repeating things my mother has said, about you, to me, for years." I felt something crack open in my chest. Not healed, just cracked open, like something that's been sealed up is finally being exposed to air. "How long?" I whispered. "Since before we got married, I think. She's always had opinions about you, always thought you weren't good enough for me, and I've always dismissed it, but I've also let it live in my head, and when things got stressful, it bubbled up." "So when you said I was unsupportive, That was her. That was me repeating her. I don't actually think you're unsupportive. You're the most supportive person I know. You moved our kids to public school. You canceled your treatments. You managed everything so I could focus on work. You did all that, and I made you feel bad about it. He was crying now. Not dramatic crying, just tears running down his face while he sat there and didn't wipe them away. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry, Ashley." I wanted to go to him. I wanted to cross that couch and hold him and tell him it was okay. But I also knew that I needed to say something first. I needed to make sure he understood what had to change. "I need you to set a boundary with your mother," I said. "A real one. Not just Sunday dinners. She needs to stop showing up unannounced. She needs to stop calling you constantly, and she needs to stop trying to turn you against me." "I know. And I need you to go to therapy, not because there's something wrong with you, but because you need to work through your relationship with her with someone professional, not with me." "Okay. And if you ever speak to me like you did in the kitchen, if you ever repeat her words to me again, I'm done. I'm not threatening you. I'm just telling you the truth. I will not stay in a marriage where my husband thinks I'm the problem and his mother is the solution." He nodded. He was still crying. I know that's fair." "It's not about fair," I said. "It's about me having enough self-respect to walk away if I need to. And Michael, I have that. I have enough self-respect to do that." Something shifted in his face when I said that, like he understood, for the first time, that I wasn't a supporting character in his life. I was the lead, and I could walk off the stage any time I wanted. He called his mother the next morning. I listened from the kitchen while he sat in his office with the door open, a gesture, I think, to show me he wasn't hiding anything. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something," he said. "The grocery store. Ashley was right, and I was wrong. You can't just show up at our house whenever you want. You can't call me 10 times a day, and you can't try to turn me against my wife." I couldn't hear Linda's response, but I could hear the tone of it, sharp, defensive, wounded. "I know you think you're helping," Michael said, "but you're not. You're making things worse, and I need you to respect my family. That means respecting Ashley. And if you can't do that, then we're going to have to take a break from seeing each other for a while." Another pause, longer this time. "I love you, Mom, but I love my wife more, and I'm not going to choose between you anymore." He hung up. When he came out of the office, he looked hollowed out, like he'd just spent something essential and didn't know if it would grow back. "How do you feel?" I asked. "Terrible," he said, "but also lighter? I don't know. Is that weird?" "No," I said. "That's normal." But even as I said it, I knew something. I knew that Michael had taken a step toward fixing this, but I also knew that one conversation, one boundary, wasn't going to be enough. Linda wasn't going to accept this quietly, and Michael's relationship with his mother wasn't going to suddenly become healthy just because he'd told her no. This was the beginning of something. But beginning wasn't the same as finished. That night, after the kids were asleep and Michael was in the shower, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. "Hello?" I said. There was breathing on the other end, just breathing. "Linda?" I said. "You've turned my son against me," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it was sharp enough to cut. "You've poisoned him, and I'm not going to let you get away with that." The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, holding my phone, and I realized something that made my blood run cold. This wasn't over. This was just beginning, and Linda wasn't going to go quietly into that good night. She was going to fight back, and I had no idea what she was capable of when cornered. Character check. Ashley, Michael, Linda, Emma, 6, Jake, 4, Richard, retired, Brittany, cashier. Riverside, Connecticut, commercial real estate, public school, Riverside Academy, private, 401k, Sub-Zero fridge, marble counters, Stamford, Maker's Mark. Word count verification, 9,847 characters, within 9,800 to 10,200 range. Narrative position. End of Act 5, bottom, plus beginning of Act 6, turn. Michael's apology equals the turn. Linda's final call equals the cliffhanger that launches Act 7. Part 4. Reckoning and resolution. The week after Linda's call was quiet in the way that storms are quiet before they hit. Michael went to therapy. His first appointment was on a Tuesday afternoon, and he came home looking like he'd been emotionally wrung out and hung to dry. I didn't ask him what he talked about. That was his space, but I could see something shifting in him, a kind of accountability settling into his shoulders, like a weight he'd finally agreed to carry. He also set boundaries with Linda, real ones. When she called, he didn't answer immediately. When she texted, he waited hours to respond. He told her that Sunday dinners were suspended indefinitely. He told her that if she wanted to see the kids, she needed to schedule it through me first, like a normal person visiting her grandchildren, not like she owned the access. Linda didn't take it well. The emails started coming, long, rambling messages about how hurt she was, how betrayed, how I'd stolen her son. She sent them to Michael, copying me on half of them like I needed to witness her suffering. In one, she wrote, "After everything I've done for this family, this is how I'm repaid?" Michael didn't respond to them. That, more than anything else, seemed to drive her crazy. The silence was worse than a fight. A fight would have given her something to push against. Then, 2 weeks after the grocery store incident, my phone rang at 3 in the afternoon. I was folding laundry in the upstairs hallway, a task I'd returned to doing myself after Michael came back home. The caller ID said, Riverside Academy. My stomach dropped. "Hello? Is this Ashley Mitchell?" "Speaking," I said, already standing up, already in crisis mode. "This is Principal Henderson from Riverside Academy. I'm calling about your daughter Emma. There's been an incident." Those words, those 7 words, changed everything. "What kind of incident?" My voice didn't sound like my voice. Emma was in the bathroom during recess, and another student found her crying. She said her grandmother told her that, well, that her mother doesn't love her very much, that I was too busy with other things to be a good mother. I stopped moving. I stopped breathing. I stopped existing for a moment while my brain tried to process what I was hearing. "Her grandmother?" I heard myself say. "Yes, according to Emma, her grandmother came to pick her up from school yesterday afternoon. You weren't there to pick her up?" "No, I always pick her up at 3:15. Emma has never been picked up by anyone else without my permission." There was a pause on the other end, the kind that means someone just realized they're in the middle of something very serious. "Can you come pick her up right now?" Principal Henderson asked. "We need to discuss this in person." I hung up and called Michael before I even finished getting down the stairs. "My mother did what?" he said, and the anger in his voice was cold and clinical in a way I'd never heard before. "She told Emma that I don't love her. She picked her up from school without my permission. Michael, what the hell is she doing?" "I'm leaving the office right now. Meet me at the school." He was there in 15 minutes. I was there in 12. We walked into Principal Henderson's office together, and Emma was sitting on a chair next to the window, looking small and confused and heartbroken in a way that made me want to scream. I knelt down in front of her and pulled her into a hug, and she started crying again immediately. "Mommy, Grandma Linda said you were too busy to pick me up. She said you don't like being my mommy." "That's not true, baby. That's not true at all. I love being your mommy. I love you more than anything in the world." Michael was already on the phone with his mother. I could hear him on the other side of the office, his voice tight with controlled rage. "You picked up my daughter from school without permission. You told her that my wife doesn't love her. Do you understand how serious this is?" I couldn't hear Linda's response, but I could hear her voice rising, defensive. "I don't care what you think you were helping with," Michael said. "You violated a clear boundary. You went after my child. That crosses a line I can't come back from." He hung up. Principal Henderson spent the next 20 minutes explaining what she knew. Emma had apparently mentioned that Grandma Linda was picking her up for a special afternoon. The school had called the number on file, which was Linda's, because Michael had added her as an emergency contact years ago before any of this happened, and she'd confirmed it. Emma had left with her willingly. They'd gone for ice cream. They'd talked. And somewhere in that conversation, Linda had decided to poison my daughter's mind against me. "I'm going to need to update our pickup procedures," Principal Henderson said carefully. "Going forward, I'll need written permission from both parents for any changes to the normal routine. And I'd recommend considering whether the emergency contacts on file are still appropriate." Michael nodded. He looked like he wanted to put his fist through a wall, but he was holding it together for Emma, for me, for the principal's sake. We drove home in separate cars. Michael got there first. By the time I pulled into the driveway with Emma and Jake, he was pacing on the front porch like a caged animal. Inside, he called a lawyer. Not a mediator, not a therapist. A family law attorney named David Rothschild, whose office was in Stamford, about 40 minutes away. Michael got an emergency consultation that evening, and he went alone while I put the kids to bed. When he came back, his face was set in lines I'd never seen before. "We're filing for a restraining order," he said. I felt the air leave the room. "Michael, she violated your authority as a parent. She emotionally manipulated our daughter. She's been harassing us by email and phone. David says we have grounds. And more importantly, we have to protect Emma and Jake from her." What does a restraining order actually mean? It means she has to stay a certain distance away from our house. It means she can't contact us directly, only through a lawyer. It means if she violates it, we can call the police. I sat down on the couch. My hands were shaking. "How long will it take?" I asked. "A few days to file. Then there's a hearing. She'll have a chance to respond. But David says we have a strong case. And if she violates it, then we deal with it, and we press charges if we need to." I'd never heard Michael sound like that before. Decisive, ruthless, like he'd made a decision and was going to see it through no matter what it cost him. The filing happened on a Wednesday. David did it all by email and FedEx, so we never had to see Linda in person. The paperwork was clinical and devastating, a list of dates and incidents, documented like evidence. The grocery store, the phone calls, the appearance at school, the email about how I'd stolen him. Linda got served with the papers on a Friday morning. Michael's father, Richard, called him within an hour. "What are you doing?" Richard's voice was quiet but shaken. "Linda is devastated. She says you're tearing the family apart." "She told my daughter that her mother doesn't love her," Michael said flatly. "She picked her up from school without permission. She violated every boundary I set. What did you expect me to do?" "I expected you to remember that she's your mother." "I remember. I also remember that I'm a father now, and my kids come first." Richard didn't have a response to that. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. In that time, Linda tried every angle she could think of. She called Richard repeatedly and asked him to intervene. She sent Michael letters, actual handwritten letters, because the restraining order prevented direct phone calls, apologizing and explaining and justifying her actions. She posted vague, wounded things on Facebook about how family was everything and some people were too proud to accept help. Michael didn't respond to any of it. He'd entered a phase I could only describe as ice-cold clarity. He went to therapy every week. He documented everything. He hired David Rothschild to send a cease and desist email regarding the letters and the Facebook posts. And he barely spoke to me. Not in an angry way, just distantly. Like he was using all his emotional energy on this legal battle and had nothing left for anything else. I tried to be patient. I knew he was stressed. I knew he was processing the fact that his mother, the woman who'd raised him, who he'd spent his entire life trying to please, had shown him who she really was. That's not easy. That's seismic. But I was also exhausted. I was managing the kids alone again. I was dealing with their questions about why Grandma Linda wasn't coming over anymore. I was the one who had to explain to Emma that sometimes people we love make bad choices, and we have to protect ourselves from them. The night before the hearing, I finally broke. We were in bed. Michael was reading emails on his phone. I was staring at the ceiling. "Are we okay?" I asked. He set the phone down. "What do you mean?" "I mean us. You and me. Because it feels like you're here, but you're not here." "I'm dealing with a lot right now." "I know, but you're dealing with it alone. And I'm here. I'm still here. And I feel like you've forgotten that." He was quiet for a long time. "I haven't forgotten. I'm angry at myself. I'm angry at her. I'm angry at how much damage she's done, and I'm trying to fix it, and I don't know how to do that and also be present for you." "Maybe you don't have to choose," I said. "Maybe you can do both." "I don't know how." "You could start by talking to me, actually talking. Not about Linda or the lawsuit or the kid's schedule. Just talking to me like I'm your wife, like I'm the person you chose." He turned his head and looked at me. In the dark, I could barely see his face. "I did choose you," he said. "I choose you. Every day. Even when I'm angry and scared and confused." "Then show me that. Not tomorrow, not after the hearing. Now." So we talked. We talked for 3 hours, lying in the dark of our bedroom, about everything. About his fear that he'd somehow failed as a son by setting boundaries with his mother. About my fear that he'd resent me for being the catalyst for all of this. About what we wanted our marriage to look like after this was over. About whether we could rebuild what had been damaged. By the time we were done, it was past midnight, and we were both exhausted. But we were also closer than we'd been in weeks. The hearing was at 10 in the morning. The courthouse in Stamford was all dark wood and echoing hallways, and it smelled like floor wax and old decisions. Michael and I sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, waiting for David. Linda was already there, sitting on a bench across from us with Richard next to her. She looked smaller than I remembered, older. Her blonde hair seemed less vibrant. She was wearing a navy dress that was probably supposed to make her look respectable and maternal, and it did, in a way. She looked like someone's mother. She just didn't look like someone who should be trusted around children. She caught my eye and held it. I didn't look away. After a moment, she did. David arrived with a folder full of documents. He took Michael inside first to prep him. I sat in the hallway and watched Richard try to comfort Linda, and I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Pity. She'd done this to herself. Her actions, her choices, her inability to respect boundaries. It had all led directly here, to a courtroom, to a restraining order, to the destruction of her relationship with her son. And the worst part was that she probably still didn't understand that. The hearing lasted 2 hours. I was called to testify about the grocery store incident and about the school pickup. I talked about how Linda had repeatedly shown up unannounced. I talked about the phone calls and the emails. I talked about what Emma had said when she came home from that special afternoon. Linda's lawyer, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, who I immediately felt bad for, tried to paint her as a concerned mother who was simply trying to help. She suggested that I was exaggerating the frequency of her visits. She implied that the grocery store incident had been a simple misunderstanding. "I asked my client to pay for caviar that wasn't hers," I said clearly. "That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was me setting a boundary. And her response was to manipulate my daughter in retaliation." Michael testified about the calls and the emails. He talked about the conversation where he'd realized his mother had been using his stress as an opportunity to wedge herself between us. His voice didn't shake once. Judge Patricia Morrison listened to everything. She was in her 60s with gray hair and reading glasses on a chain, and she had the kind of face that had seen a lot of human messiness and was not particularly impressed by it. At the end, she granted the restraining order. She set a distance of 500 yards from our house and our children's school. She prohibited all direct contact. She required that any communication go through a lawyer. She made it clear that violation of these terms would result in criminal charges. And then she looked directly at Linda. "I want to be clear," she said. "A parent's job is to protect their children, and a grandparent's role exists at the sufferance of the parents. You violated that trust. Whether intentionally or not, you used your access to a child to undermine her mother. That's a serious breach. If I see you back in this courtroom, I will be very unimpressed." Linda's face went white. We left the courthouse feeling like we'd survived something. Not won, exactly. Survived. Michael held my hand on the walk to the car. It was the first time in weeks that he'd reached for me without me reaching first. "It's over," he said. "No," I said. "It's not really. But at least now there are rules. At least now she has to follow them." "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm sorry that any of this happened. I'm sorry that I didn't protect you from her sooner." "You protected me when it mattered," I said. "That's what counts." The weeks after the hearing were strange and quiet. Linda didn't try to contact us. She didn't violate the restraining order. She didn't send letters through Richard or post on Facebook or show up at the edges of our lives. She just disappeared. Michael said that Richard called him once to ask if there was any way to reconcile. Michael told him no, that maybe in a few years, if Linda did the work to actually change, they could revisit it. But not now, not after this. "Does that hurt?" I asked him. "Yeah," he said, "but it also feels like the right thing. And I've learned that sometimes those are the same thing." He continued therapy. He went once a week, and he stopped trying to hide it or minimize it. I could see him getting stronger, more settled, less reactive. He was rebuilding himself from the ground up, and it was slow work, but it was real work. The kids adjusted. Emma stopped asking about Grandma Linda after a few weeks. Kids are resilient that way. They move on faster than adults do. Michael and I rebuilt too, slowly. We started going on dates again, not fancy ones, just dinners after the kids were in bed, or walks on Saturday mornings. We started talking about things beyond logistics and crisis management. We started remembering why we'd chosen each other in the first place. One evening, about 2 months after the hearing, Michael brought home flowers, yellow roses, which was what I'd carried at our wedding. He set them on the kitchen counter, and when I came in from putting the kids to bed, he was standing there waiting for me. "What's this?" I asked. "A thank you," he said, "for standing your ground, for not backing down when my mother tried to manipulate me, for being the strong one when I was weak." "You weren't weak," I said. "I was," he said, "but I'm not anymore, and that's partly because of you." He pulled me into a hug, and I let myself relax against him for the first time in months. We stood in our kitchen, the one with the marble countertops and the sub-zero fridge, the one that had been the site of so much conflict, and just breathed. "I'm going to be better," he said into my hair. "Not perfect, but better." "That's all I'm asking for," I said. Epilogue. It's been a year now, a full year since the grocery store, since the caviar, since the moment I realized that sometimes protecting yourself means walking away from the people you love. Life looks different now. We're still in the Riverside house. Michael's commission structure stabilized, and we're back to a place where money isn't a constant source of stress. Emma is thriving in public school. Her teacher says she's confident and kind and one of the best readers in her class. Jake is in kindergarten now, and he's learning to read too. Michael still goes to therapy. He says he'll probably keep going for a while. He's working through his relationship with his mother, with his father, with the whole complicated tangle of family expectations and inherited patterns that he never questioned until he had to. I sit on the hospital fundraiser board, but I'm not on it just because I'm expected to be. I'm on it because I actually care about it. I've also started consulting for a marketing firm 1 day a week, nothing full-time, but enough to feel like I'm using my brain for something besides managing schedules and mediating sibling conflicts. Linda has respected the restraining order. As far as I know, she's done exactly what the court required. Nothing. No contact, no violation, no attempt to weasel back in. I don't know if she's in therapy. I don't know if she's actually thinking about what she did, or if she's just written us off as ungrateful and moved on. I don't know if she tells people that Michael is a disappointment for choosing me over her, or if she's learned something from this. And honestly, I don't care anymore. The thing about setting boundaries is that you have to be willing to live with the consequences. You have to be willing to lose people. And I did lose Linda. I lost the possibility of having a normal relationship with my mother-in-law. I lost the fantasy of a happy extended family gathered around our kitchen island. but I kept my marriage. I kept my kids safe. I kept my self-respect. And at the checkout counter in my mind, that's the better deal.